Blesse mon cœur d'une langueur monotone. Je répète, blesse mon cœur d'une langueur monotone.
Hey everybody, Dutchsinse here. 2:12 p.m. Central Time on Wednesday, September 4th, 2013. And we're looking at Earthquake 3D here, which is a USGS feed of the most recent earthquakes. You can just see it, this little 2.5 here on the west coast here. But I want to show you what happened over the last several days. Last night was just wild. We saw earthquake after earthquake going up the west coast, across Alaska, over to Japan, multiple 6.0s. So I just want to go ahead and show you guys the activity. And we'll start by taking it back the full 7 days. Earthquake 3D will show us a lot of different things, but we can look at the last 7 days of 2.5 and greater in the United States and 4.0 and greater internationally. And this is going to stand out to you. I mean, this really should stand out to you that we're seeing a lot of activity. You can really just see it across the entire map, the West Pacific in particular, and I have to take these up to different magnitudes so you can see all the large earthquakes. Here's 5.9 and greater. So we're looking at multiple 6.0s across the West Pacific, from, let's just say, Papua New Guinea, here at the 6.2, all the way to Sumatra, Indonesia, 6.5, 6.5 in Japan, 7.0 at the chain of Alaska, and then going right up through, we had multiple 6.0s following that up in the same location, and then offshore west coast of Canada, 6.0, 5.9, and that's the large quote-unquote earthquakes that have happened over the last 7 days. That's a lot of movement. Normally there's supposed to be 2 to 3 every week, and that's per the USGS statistics, just an average number, 2 to 3 per week. So right now we're over double that. And now I want to show you the 5.0s and greater, and these will show us the cluster points, the areas where we're seeing large uptick in activity, where we need to watch for further movement. So here's everything 5.0 and greater, and then you really begin to see it. All right, so we have Alaska standing out here above all else at the Aleutian Island chain, which is volcanic, and then going south through Indonesia, again, volcanic areas, undersea volcanoes in these regions as well. So these are areas where we're going to need to watch from just north of New Zealand, stemming west, all the way through Indonesia. Noticeably silent over here, Sumatra, the place where we had the massive tsunami several years ago that killed hundreds of thousands of people. And the plate break, the Indo-Australian plate break with the two 8.0s in 2011 going into 2012. Now up here in China, there were a series of earthquakes that killed several people. You didn't hear much about it on the news, but multiple people died in these 5.0, upper 5.0 earthquakes that occurred in China. And then silence over here on the west. So we haven't seen anything large, 5.0 or greater, anywhere in Europe or in Africa. We saw activity down at the volcanic regions in Africa, but nothing up here in Europe, which means we need to watch. Anywhere where you're seeing silence in large earthquake activity, we need to watch for movement right now because of the amount of movement occurring in adjacent areas. The entire plate, the entire Pacific plate is in flux right now, causing a spillover effect to occur across Alaska and now on the east side of the Pacific. And now to see the earthquake activity in the United States, let's take this down another notch. Now we're looking at 4.0 and greater. When you look at the 4.0 and greater, first of all, West Pacific really stands out now. The higher these rings are off the planet, the deeper they are in the earth. That signifies the depth. So you can see several large, deep earthquakes right on top of each other. And again, these are volcanic regions. So this is most likely undersea volcano activity at a lot of these areas. But in the United States, 2 back-to-back fracking earthquakes at Timpson, Texas. And that brings me into a story that just broke today. There was some debate amongst professionals over the last couple of years about whether or not fracking can cause earthquakes, right? I mean, they're so behind the times. But here's a story that just broke on Yahoo News, Live Science, and I'll just read the first paragraph to you, and you guys can read the rest. I'll link this down below the video. Wastewater from the controversial practice of fracking appears to be linked to all the earthquakes in a town in Ohio that had no known past quakes. All right, and this is no shock to those of us who have watched the earthquake activity happen in these areas to the south and to the east. You can go look up the earthquake coordinates easily by just typing them in on Google Earth and go see what resides at those locations. Here's a 2.5, for instance, that occurred in Oklahoma. Just go look that up, and you'll see within 500 feet to 700 feet, there is a large fracking operation, the edge of a large fracking operation and pumping operation. Same within Timpson, Texas, these two 4.0s. Just go look them up. Takes you right down on top of a frack well. Now we have a couple earthquakes that happened here on the New Madrid, okay, a 2.5 right at the border of, let's just say, Tennessee and Arkansas. That is actually not at a fracking location, a little bit deeper than the 3.1 kilometers we see at these fracking earthquake depths. And then right here, let's see if we can zoom this in at all, at Missouri-Arkansas border, that is actually at a fracking operation. There's several wells right down here. It's on the Arkansas side of the border. Missouri has very few frack operations, whereas Arkansas is riddled with them, okay? And what that says is that the movement to the south is occurring at man-made operations. Like 3 to 4 of these earthquakes out of the 5 or 6 that are here are at man-made locations. Induced seismicity, as they call it technically. And so when you see other earthquakes that are occurring up here to the northwest, for instance, let's just say up here in Nebraska, also up near Yellowstone, the 2.5 here, also at Idaho, near the Lava Hot Springs, okay, anywhere in this region up here, this is the northwest edge of the craton. The craton extends from the Pacific Northwest all the way down here to the south to Texas, and then curls back up to the northeast, which leads me to say we've seen all this earthquake activity up here to the Pacific Northwest. It's now building pressure and spilling down to the south, causing the more recent earthquakes down here in the Midwest. Now, this means we need to watch to the northeast because the pressure transfer is actually going from west to east as opposed to what we're normally taught about the mid-Atlantic plate spreading and pushing to the west. There's too much pressure going on over here to the west. It's spilling over to the east. And that's causing earthquakes at areas where we wouldn't normally see activity. It may also be causing, let's say, the salt dome collapse down at Bayou Corn, because we're getting pressure from the opposite direction from where they never thought it would come from. We were all taught, spreading from the mid-Atlantic outwards, pressure from the east going to the west. And the subduction zone supposedly was enough to take care of any pressure coming from the west, that the plate would subduct and the pressure would be relieved in earthquakes to the west. But too much movement. Look at it. Okay, this is just the past 48 hours. We can back this out a little further, and again, just take a look at all the earthquakes. All right, this is a huge amount of earthquakes compared to the last several months where we didn't see hardly any large earthquake activity, and you compare that to now, okay? Now, one final thing, I'm going to put a link down below to this. I've assembled multiple earthquake links and volcano links. You can go watch the volcano webcams. We won't do that now, but you can go through the earthquake links and go actually look at the web recorders, the different seismographs around the world you can check out here. We've got as many as I could find, and I'm sure there's many more, but this is a nice list to get you going. We've got the EMSC and different European agencies over here, global links, regional links, each country, Russia, Japan, Thailand, Australia, Netherlands, each country has their own observatory for these things, and you can dial into those and go ahead and pull up the charts on those if you would like, okay? Hang in there, folks. Always have an earthquake plan ready and be prepared. If you live in the U.S., of course, that means anywhere along the edge of the craton, you would need to be prepared. I live in the New Madrid seismic zone. Always good just to have that earthquake plan ready and be prepared, just in case. Never know when it can hit. Look at the cluster points of activity. Okay, so this kind of gives you an idea of where to watch on the West Coast, for instance. You've seen this tremendous movement up here to the northwest. This means that we need to watch anywhere along the West Coast. It's a huge area to watch. We can't nail it down to a specific state, but I would say from the off the coast of Oregon, south to Baja California, be prepared just in case, and also on the southern edge of the North American craton. We can also expect lighter movement up here in the northeast, somewhere up here in Canada, right here along the north edge where it goes out to the sea. Europe, be prepared as well, okay? You've only had some 4.0 activity over the last week, no 5.0, no 6.0, and it's all occurring just to your east, and you can see the spillover that's occurring from this, okay? It just follow the edge, and that takes you right into South Europe, into southern, let's say southern Greece and northern Italy. Maybe as far north as Netherlands, Poland, where we also have not seen very many large earthquakes in the last few months. Remember the last few years, guys, we had a 4.0 and 5.0, Netherlands, Poland, multiple back and forth earthquakes. Now that's kind of quieted down. And that pretty much sums it up. When you see the activity that's occurring, I just pointed out all the activity in the United States and Europe. To the west, we have a huge watch area. We have an area that extends from New Zealand north to Vanuatu, and then west all the way to Indonesia. North all the way to Japan, multiple 6.0s that occurred over the past several weeks, and now we just had that 6.5 yesterday off the southeast coast of Japan. So it's a large area to watch. It extends as far over into Europe, through Asia, North India, and goes as far north as Alaska. And of course, we reach all the way down the west coast. South America, we've seen no large earthquake activity from Colombia south to Chile in the last several months. So we need to watch Colombia going south through Chile, especially on the west coast, Argentina, Chile, for possible movement. And that's because of the rest of the movement around the Pacific Plate. Okay? Cheers, folks. Be safe.